Hi everyone, how are you? I hope you're all doing great, no? Kamusta na ang mga research ninyo? I hope na nakapagsimula na kayo sa data gathering or malapit ng matapos. Okay? So for our lesson today, we will discuss about data preparation and analysis. The objectives first is to identify the steps in data preparation process and the 5 areas to cover in the process validation. Okay? So first, data preparation. So the data preparation process normally follows 5 steps approaching beginning with data validation, data editing, and coding of data, followed by data entry, error detection, and data tabulation. The purpose of data preparation process is to take the data in its raw form and convert it so as establish meaning and create value for the user. So sa data preparation, ito na yung inaayos na natin yung mga raw data na nakuha ninyo from your data gathering. Okay? So yung mga answers ng mga respondents nyo, ipagsasama-samahin na natin, itatabulate na natin so that mai-prepare ninyo sa pag-interpret ng data at sa paggawa or pag-construct ng inyong findings about the research. Okay? And ang unang step doon ay, of course, kailangan natin munang i-prepare yung data. So, for coding, editing, and preparing data for analysis, first we have data validation. This is concerned in determining to extent possible whether the surveys, interviews, or observations are conducted correctly and are free of fraud or bias. So, walang bias. Kailangan natin i-validate yung data if there are anong tawag dito, there are in good quality, in good condition para makapag-generate ng findings doon sa study. That's why it's very important na free of fraud or free from bias yung data natin. So those data are valid, okay? And then we have data editing. This is the process whereby the raw data are checked for errors made by either the interviewer or the respondents. Sina-check natin if may error ba yung nakuha nating data. Usually ginagamit to kapag sa mga interviews, 'di ba? Kasi it's one-on-one yung data gathering nila na tatanungin nila yung question mismo doon sa respondents. So generally, the process of validation attempts to cover 5 areas. Yung fraud, dapat free from fraud. Na-screen yung data, na valid yung mga data natin and in good quality, in good condition. The procedure of the data gathering itself, the completeness of the gathered data, and yung courtesy. Okay? So next we have the encoding process, data coding involving groupings and assigning value of responses to the questions contained in the survey instruments. So coding entails the assignment of numerical values to its individual response for each question within the survey. So ito ang example natin. So some of you or a lot of you ay gumamit ng 5 points Likert scale, di ba? 5-point level of satisfaction. May mga gumamit ng 5-point or 4-point level of agreements. Yan. So, sa encoding process, na-gather na natin yung mga data na yon. Okay? And then yung mga numeric values natin. Okay? So, next is error detection. So, iscan nyo yung mga questionnaire ninyo. Nasagutan bang mabuti? Yung mga questions, may sagot ba lahat ng questions na nakuha from respondents, each respondents? Kompleto ba yung answers nila sa questionnaire? Wala bang nagdoble ng sagot sa isang item and all. So, you have to detect that kasi mga error yon. And then data tabulation. Tabulation is the process of counting the numbers of observation or cases that are classified into certain categories. So there are two common forms of data tabulation. These are one-way tabulation and the other one is cross tabulation. So you now assess or collect and arrange yung mga raw data nyo. Itatabulate na natin siya. You can arrange that based on their variables or naka-per questions and all. So yun. Diyan papasok yung data tabulation natin. Now let's move on to the statistical analysis and data presentation. The objectives first is to describe the different ways in presenting data. So presenting the data, meron tayong iba't ibang ways sa pag-present ng data. Pwede tayong gumamit ng mga graphs. So example niyan, yung mga line graph natin, yung bar graph, yung pictograph, yung pie graph, pwede yon. Pwede natin gamitin yon. Pwede rin tayong gumamit ng table sa pag-present ng data. For researches, we usually use tables, no, doon sa mga research natin. So, but yes, pwede rin tayong gumamit ng mga graph. If you're more comfortable in using graph, pwede rin tayong gumamit ng mga graph. So, the graph should have titles. Always remember this. The graph should have titles, labels on both horizontal and vertical scales, and heading for each scale. So, yung mga graph natin, may labels dapat yan, yung horizontal and vertical parts. I'll show you later. Graphs are the most efficient ways and easiest way to understand the data that was gathered. Yes, kasi from here, mavi-visualize na natin yung mga nakuha nating data. Okay, sige. Isa-isahin natin. Let's have an example. First, we have the line graph. Line graph is a graph that shows the relationship between two sets of quantities. So, yan. Two sets of quantities. Remember that. So, ito ang example ng line graph. This is a graph ng product sales. So here, ito yung in thousands, US dollars. Ito yung product sales. And then dito naman sa horizontal line natin, yung months. So nag-start ng October 19 hanggang June 2020. So, sabi sa line graph, pinapakita nito yung relationship between two sets of quantities. So, relationship ng product sales in thousands and then yung product sales in month. So, yan. So, from there, makikita na ninyo pwede na kayong makapag-interpret ng data and maiintindihan nyo na din yung data, yung growth ng sales nila. Diba? So, from here, tumaas siya during November and then bumaba ulit during December. Okay, so medyo tumataas and bumababa. But pagdating ng June, tumaas yung sales nila. And ito yung and June 2020 yung may pinakamalaking sales sila. Okay? So yan. Very clear na makikita natin sa line graph yung relationship between two quantities. And then we have another type of graph, yung bar graph. Ang bar graph naman, meron siyang mga rectangles. Yan. So, ang bar graph, this is done by drawing rectangles with length proportional to frequencies of observed items or magnitude of classes under study. So, ito ang example niya. So, meron ulit tayong labels here. So, ito ay summer camp sign-ups. Graph ng summer camp sign-ups. We have number of sign-ups here. And then, yung mga pwede nilang gawin sa summer camp. Ang sabi dito, proportion to frequencies, yung kung gaano kadami. So that's frequency or observed magnitude, okay? So here, pwede na rin nating makapag-interpret from this. May intindihan na natin yung data or kung gaano pa kadami yung nag-sign up doon sa iba't ibang camp dun sa summer camp or iba't ibang programs dun sa summer camp. From here, makikita natin na pinakamataas, maraming nag-sign up sa band. So, interested sila sa band for the summer camp. And then, sa math and cheerleading, pareho sila. And then, pinakakaunti naman yung sa drama. Okay? So, from there, makikita na din natin, maiintindihan na natin yung data. Okay? So, this is your bar graph. Remember, ginagamit to sa frequency of observed items or magnitude. And then, we also have circle graph or pie chart. So, ito naman, these represent relationships of the different components of a single total as revealed in the sectors of a circle. So it helps us see what percentage of the whole each category constitutes. Ito. Nakalagay number of participants per game. So, merong Monopoly, Candalan, Jenga, Chess, Twister, Poker, and Uno. So, from here, makikita na din natin kung ilang percentage ang participants sa Monopoly. Pinakamalaki yung sa Candelan. And then, sumunod yung sa Monopoly. And then, Twister. And then, from there, chess, and then we have Jenga, then poker, then konti lang yung participants dun sa Uno. So, here. Pwede nyo itong gamitin sa mga demographics and all, if you like, yung pie chart natin, since china-check nyo yung relationships or yung components as a whole, yung mga respondents, okay? So, ito ang example ng circle graph or pie chart. And then we have scatter diagram. So, ito naman siya. Para siyang line graph without the line. Okay? Ang scatter diagram, this shows the relationship between the two quantitative variables. So, unlike dun sa line graph natin, wala siyang line. Meron lang siyang plotted points. Every pair of x and y set of quantities are not connected by the line segments but are simply scattered on the Cartesian plane. Nakascattered lang siya, wala siyang line. Okay? So, ang graph na ito ay ginagamit natin kapag nagpo-portray tayo ng correlation in Pearson R, which will be our topic next lesson, yung Pearson R correlation. Tama ba? Yes, kasama yung Pearson R dun. So, here. So, ito, scatter plot for overall performance score of 14 local health department survey. So, from here, meron tayong full survey plus 3 questions and then screen. Meron na din ditong labels and legends. Yung block na circle for jurisdictional coverage and then yung white naman ay for health department contribution. So, from here, makikita nyo na din yung pagka-input ng mga data. Okay? So this is your scatter diagram. Okay, now let's move on to measure of central tendency. So this is your mean, your median, your mode, your range, and your standard deviation. Kung natatandaan nyo pa, ito ay naging topic na ninyo during last school year for applied business tools. So, magiging review na lang sa inyo to. Refresher the discussion para sa measure of central tendency in this version. It's because na-topic nyo na ito and nagawa nyo na from last school year from your applied business tools. Okay? So, sige, refresh natin. So, first, sa measure of central tendency, we have the mean. So yung mean, this is commonly called the average of a set of n numbers is the sum of all the numbers divided by n. So ito yung formula niya. Ito, ibig sabihin niya summation. So ibig sabihin, summation of xi divided by n. So, where xi is the data values and then yung n ay number of observation. Lagi niyong tatandaan, kapag mean, ang kinukuha mo dyan ay yung average. Okay? Mean is equals to average. So, we have an example here. Example, suppose you chose 10 people who entered the campus and whose ages are as follows: 15, 25, 18, 20, 25, 18, 18, 20, 20, 25. So what is the mean age of this group? So, ang sabi dito, ang formula for mean ay the summation of data values divided by the number of observations. So kung i-decipher natin yung code, we have to add all of this kasi ito yung data values from 15 to 25. So, here, i-add mo siya 15 plus 25 plus 18 plus 20 plus 25 plus 18 plus 18 plus 20 plus 20 plus 25. And then yung total ng lahat ng ito ay i-divide mo sa number of observations dun sa n. So, ilan ba to? 10 daw to lahat, sabi. 10 people. Sige, bilangin natin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, ibig sabihin nun, i-add mo to lahat and then i-divide mo siya sa 10 kasi 10 ito, 10 lahat ito. So, ang sagot dyan ay 20.4, which means that the mean age of the group is 20.4 years. Ito yung average. Okay? So, yun. So, that's your mean. And then now let's move on to median. Median is the middle number when the number in a set of data is arranged in descending or ascending order. So, when there are even numbers of the elements, the median is the mean of the two middle numbers. Kung ang mean, siya yung average, ang median naman ay yung middle number, siya yung nasa gitna. Pero take note, no, meron tayong odd and even. Okay? So, kapag ganito, i-arrange mo yung data set in ascending order or descending order. Okay? Pag susunod-sunurin mo yung number sa data. And then, dun mo kukunin yung median niya. Kapag odd number siya, kung ano yung nasa gitna, if odd number siya, yun na yung mean niya. Okay? But ito, even number siya. So, let's have a little computation lang naman. Okay? So, kung hindi siya naka-arrange, i-arrange mo siya ng magkasunod-sunod. Okay? Ascending order. So, here, in-arrange natin 23, 23, 23, 25, 26, 29, 29, 30, 31, 35. Ito lang din yun, class, ha. Naka-arrange lang siya in ascending order. So, kapag median, since odd number siya, kukunin natin yung nasa gitna. So, ano ba yung nasa gitnang number? Since 10 sila, hanapin natin yung nasa gitna. So, saan na yung cursor ko? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, sabihin 26. Ito yung nasa gitna. And then, sa kabila naman, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, 29. So, ipag-add natin si 26 plus 29. 26 plus 29 is equals to 55. And then, i-divide natin siya by 2. Divided by 2. So, the answer is 27.5. So, ito na siya. The median age of the graduate students is 27.5 years. Okay? Clear ba yon? Okay, so kami naguluhan ha. Yung median, yun yung nasa gitna. Pag add number, yung number ng median, pag add number sila, example, 3, tatlong values, 5 values, 7 values, kung ano yung nasa gitna, yun na yung median. Pero kapag even number siya, even number yung number ng values, katulad nito, 10 yung values natin dito. Kung ano yung nasa gitna, yung dalawang nasa gitna, pag-aadin mo yung dalawa na yon and then you divide it by 2 para makuha mo yung median. Okay? So now let's move on to mode. So yung mode is the number that occurs most in a set of data. A set of data can have more than one mode. If all numbers appear the same number of times, there is no mode for the data set. So the keyword for mode is repetitive. If there are two modes in a data set, it is called bimodal. If there are more than two modes, it is called multimodal. Refresh tayo ha. When we say mean, that's the average. When you say median, that's the middle number. And now when you say mode, ang key term doon ay repetitive, yung nauulit. Kung ano ba yung number na pinakamaraming beses na naulit. Okay? So let's have an example. So dito, wala siyang mode kasi walang naulit. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Walang mode. Walang naulit na number. Dito naman, we have 15.2, 12.3, 4.6, 12.3, 6.5, 12.3, and 5.5. So, ang mode nito ay 12.3 kasi tatlong beses na naulit si 12.3. We have it here. 1, 2, and then 3. So, ang mode nitong example, letter B ay 12.3. Okay? And then next we have here, example, letter C. We have 15. We have 12, we have 4, we have 15, 4, 6, and 5. Ang mode nito ay 15 and 4. It is because parehong dalawang beses na ulit si 15 and parehong beses na naulit si 4. So, bimodal siya. Dalawa yung mode niya. Okay? And then next example, we have 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, 7, 10. So, here, multimodal naman siya. It's because dalawang beses na ulit yung 3, dalawang beses na ulit yung 4, and dalawang beses na ulit yung 5. Pare-pareho kasi silang dalawang beses na ulit. Okay? Kaya sila yung mga mode. Okay? Pero kapag may dalawang beses na naulit na number, tapos may tatlong beses na naulit na number, ang kukunin natin ay yung tatlong beses na naulit na number. It is because yun yung number na may most repetitive. Okay? So there, then that's your mode. Yun siya. Your mean is your average, your median is your middle number, and yung mode is the most repetitive number. Okay? So, okay, let's have an example. Ang example na ito ay from the research the impact of emotional labor on the frontline service of the hotel industry. So, yung mga authors nito, yung mga researchers nito, gumamit sila ng 5-point Likert scale na nagpapakita ng level of agreement. So, 1 for strongly disagree, 2 for disagree, 3 for neither agree nor disagree, 4 for agree, and 5 for strongly agree. So, here, part 1 of their questionnaire. Huwag niyo munang pansinin itong interpretation kasi mamaya natin ito pag-aaralan sa range. Dito muna tayo and dito. Okay? So, yung mga researchers ng research na ito, gumamit sila ng mean statistics or average method para mas maintindihan nila yung data na makukuha nila sa mga questions nila. Okay? So, part 1, emotional intelligence. So, gumamit sila ng mean method dito. So, here are the questions. If mapapansin nyo, medyo leading yung mga questions. However, okay lang ito for the sake of Example lang para mas maintindihan niyo kung paano siya ina-apply sa study. Okay, yung mean method. So here, okay, wag niyo muna 'tong pansinin ha. So averaging method tayo. Meron tayong data here. Yan, ito yung mga data. So meron silang 15 respondents and then nakatabulate by question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, question 5. Ito yung raw data nila. Nakuha nila to sa mga respondents nila. Ito yung mga sagot ng respondents nila per question. Okay. Nakatabulate. Pwede nyo tong gamitin, class, no? Pwede nyo itabulate ng ganito yung mga data ninyo para mas madali kayong makapag-perform ng um, ang tawag dito, mas madali kayong makapag-form ng formula sa Excel. Naituro na to during your applied business tool, right? Yung mga shortcut for mean, for mode, for standard deviation. Okay? So, yun lang din yun. Okay? So, anyway, here, tinabulate nila yung raw data for, ano ito ulit? Emotional intelligence. 1 to 5 questions. Ayan, question 1 to 5. Respondents, number of respondents. So, again, di ba, kapag mean, since ang nakalagay dito, ginamit nila ay yung data nila in-interpret through mean statistics or the average method. So, ang ginawa nila, inad nila lahat ng answers ng respondents from question 1. So, 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 5 plus 4 plus 4, ganyan. So, ang total nitong lahat ay 58. And then, since average method sila, yung 58 dinivide sa total number of respondents. May 15 respondents sila. So, that's 58 divided by 15. And then, that's your mean. That's 3.86.667. Yun yung mean. Yun yung average answer ng respondents for question number 1. And then, ganun din sa question number 2, question number 3, 4, and 5. So, yun yung kinuha nila dito. So, from there, nakapag-establish na sila. So, ito yung average ng mga yon. Okay? So, mamaya natin i-interpret. Another one, pwede nyo rin gamitin yung mode dito. Again, mode is yung repetitive, most repetitive answer. So, lumabas dito na ang pinaka-repetitive answer for question number 1 ay 4. Okay, so ano ba yung question sa number 1? I have a good control of my own emotions. So, ang answer ng mga respondents mostly ay number 4. What's number 4? Agree. So, here, agree. So, ang study nila is the emotional impact of emotional labor on the frontline service of the hotel industry. So, from there, pwede ka nang makakuha ng initial thought na, mostly ng mga nagtatrabaho or working sa frontline service ay may, ay magaling mag-control ng kanilang emotion kasi high yung I agree yung sagot nila, eh, they're very good at controlling their emotions. Diba? So there, meron ka ng initial data from that. And then if you want to prove it more right, then pwede nating sabihin na important yung marunong mag-control ng emotion if you're working sa frontline service ng hotel industry, okay? So that's an example. So, pwede niyong gawin 'yon. Pwede kayong makapag-interpret na ng data from there, okay? So here, pwede nyo rin tong gawing ganito yung pag-tabulate ng data nyo. Isulat nyo yung number ng yung mga respondents and then question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I-group nyo sila per variable para hindi kayo mahirapan. Huwag niyong paghaluin yung mga variables ha, para hindi kayo malito. Pero pwede nyo silang i-group ng ganito, naka per variable and per respondents of course, para madali niyong makuha. Yung mean ng mga yon, if you like to use mean, or yung average scores ng mga respondents. Okay? So there. And now let's move on to measures of dispersion. We have range. So the range is useful when you wish to evaluate the whole of a data set. So ang range, kino-consider niya yung highest and lowest values. Hindi niya kino-consider yung mga values in between. Okay? It's because ang formula ng range are highest minus lowest value. That's your range. Okay? Always remember, highest minus lowest value, that's your range. And then we also have here variance and standard deviation. So variance measures how far a set of numbers is spread out. Yung variance mo, ito yung average of the squared difference from the mean. Ibig sabihin kung gaano siya kalayo doon sa mean, kung ano yung distance niya, kung ano yung spread niya mula doon sa mean. So that's your variance. So a large variance indicates that numbers in the set are far from the mean and each other, while small variance indicates that the opposite. Okay? So yung sa statistics, kapag mababa yung variance, the more na mas consistent yung dataset. Kapag mas maliit yung variance, mas consistent yung dataset natin. Yung standard deviation naman, ito yung square root ng variance. Okay? Kinukuha natin yung variance and standard deviation kasi ginagamit natin siya sa iba pang statistical tools, lalo na kung mag interpret tayo ng hypothesis. Okay? Which is part ng lesson natin for the next session. Sisimulan natin yung hypothesis now, but yung ibang treatment, yung mga treatment and tools na pwedeng gamitin sa hypothesis ay part ng next session natin. Okay? So here, okay, always understand yung variance, yaan yung layo niya. Yung measure niya ay kung gaano siya kalayo dun sa mean. Kung gaano siya kalayo and kalapit sa mean. Yung distance or yung spread niya from the mean. So that's your variance. We have two examples here, population variance. Ito yung kanyang, anong tawag dito? Formula. Population variance is the summation of your individual observation minus the population mean squared divided by the total number of items in the population. And then we also have the sample variance. Ito yung gagamitin natin. Sample variance is the summation of your sample mean minus your individual observation minus the sample mean squared divided by your number of items in the sample minus 1. Sample variance tayo. Okay? So, okay, let's have an example. Again, this is a review. Na-tackle nyo na to during your applied business tools and nire-review na lang natin. So, example. So, this is from your module number 16, Research in Hospitality or Research in Tourism. Example for variance, illustration, and finding variance. Given sample values, we have 7, 9, 3, 5, and 8. Ang unang step sa pagkuha ng variance ay kukunin mo yung mean. Okay? So, average method muna tayo. Kunin natin yung mean. So, remember, ang mean natin, this is the sign for mean, ay equals to the summation noong mga mga x natin or yung mga individual observation divided by the number of items in the sample. So here, pagkuha ng mean, i-add natin to lahat, 7 plus 9 plus 3 plus 5 plus 8 divided by the number of items in the sample. Kung ilan ba sila lahat? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, add nyo sila lahat divided by 5 equals 6.4. So, this is your mean. Okay? 6.4. And now, let's get your variance. Ang sample variance, ang formula niya ay the summation of your, balikan natin dito. The summation of your individual observation minus your sample mean squared divided by the number of items in the sample minus 1. So here, gagamit tayo ng table form, column form para mas madali, para hindi kayo masyadong malito. So i-dissect natin yung ano, yung formula. So ito yung dataset nyo. Okay? Yan yung mga values nyo, individual observations. So this is your X, your individual observation. So i-write nyo na dito, 7, 9, 3, 5, 8. Dito siya galing. And then X minus X bar. So your X minus yung mean. Ito yan ha, wag niyo munang tignan yung summation. Ito siya. X minus X. Yan siya. So here. So, and then, so yun. X minus X bar, i-perform nyo lang yung operation since may mean naman na tayo dito. So, 7 minus 6.4, 9, X minus 6.4, 3 minus 6.4, your mean. 5 minus 6.4, yung mean nyo ito yon. And then 8 minus 6.4. So, i-perform nyo yung operations, ito yung lalabas. 7 minus 6.4 is 0.6. 9 minus 6.4 is 2.6. 3 minus 6.4 is negative 3.4. It's because mas malaki ito. 5 minus 6.4 is negative 1.4. 8 minus 6.4 is 1.6. So, meron ka na nito, na-perform mo na to. X minus X bar. And now, sabi dito, naka-squared siya. So, X minus X bar squared. Since nagawa mo na tong part na to, i-squared mo na lang siya. Okay? So, ito na yung answers mo. Lipat mo na dito. 0.06 squared. So, 0.06 times 0.06 yon times kasi squared. And then 2.6 squared. Ito na siya. Negative 3.4 squared. Negative 1.4 squared. And then negative 1.6 squared. Squared is divided, is multiply mo siya with the same number. So, 0.6 times 0.6, ang sagot ay 0.36. 2.6 times 2.6 is 6.76. Negative 3.4 times negative 3.4, magiging positive yon since parehong negative. So, that's 11.56. And then, negative 1.4 times negative 1.4, that's 1.96. And then 1.6 times 1.6 ay 2.56. Okay? So, meron ka na ng naka-squared. So, sabi dito, summation. Diba? So, i-add mo to lahat. Pag in-add mo to lahat, ito pala. Add mo to lahat, ang lalabas ay 23.2. So, nabuo mo na here. You have 23.2. And then, n minus 1. So, yung total number ng nasa dataset, minus 1. Ilan ba sila, di ba? 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, that's 5 minus 1 is equals to 4. So, you have here now your variance. Ano mo lang, i-divide mo lang. 23.2 divided by 4, that's 5.8. So, your variance now is 5.8. Naka-squared pa to, no? So, 5.8. That's naka-squared. So, kukunin natin yung standard deviation para mas lumit siya. S squared siya eh, diba? So, 5.8. So, kukunin natin yung square root nitong 5.8. Yung naka-squared na. So, 5.8 squared, the answer is 2.41. So, ito nga na ngayon yung gagamitin natin sa mga statistical tests. Okay? And everything pwede natin siyang gamitin sa mga tools for hypothesis, or pwede nyo rin itong gamitin to define your data set if you like. Okay? So now, range. Okay, compute natin yung range. That's highest value. Ano yung pinaka-highest? 9 minus the lowest value, which is 3. So 9 minus 3, 6. So ang range ay 6. Okay, so that's how you do it. The variance, standard deviation, and range. Okay? So I have more examples here. Ito ay ang sample interpretation na ginamit nila dito, interpretation. So, we have the range here. Binigyan ko kayo ng example for 5-point scale since may mga gumamit ng 5-point scale range here and 4-point scale range. So, pwede nyo na siyang gamitin. Okay? But kung may curious kung paano na-compute ito, it's very easy, class. Okay? So, remember, ang interpretation kasi na to ay naka-range. Okay? So, sabi, ang range ay ang highest value minus the lowest value. So, madali lang yon. 5 minus 1, if you would like to compute ha, 5 minus 1 ay 4. Para ma-compute natin yung interval ng dalawa, yung 4 ay i-divide mo sa highest number. So, ano ba yung highest number sa scale? So, that's 5. So, sige. 5 divided by 5 minus 1, that's 4 divided by 5. The answer is 0.80. So, ito siya. 0.80. So, from there, pwede ka nang makagawa ng interval. Magsisimula siya sa 1, kasi 1 ito, hanggang 1.80. So, that's your range for strongly disagree, 1 to 1.80. So, magdagdag ka ng 0.80 para makakuha ka ng range mo sa 2. Sa interpretation mo ng 2. So, that's 0.60. That's 2.60 kasi 1.80 plus 0.80, that's our interval, remember? That's 2.6 or 2.60. Tapos dito, simulan mo na sa 1.81 kasi yung range mo dito, 1.00 to 1.80 eh. So here, that's 1.81 to 2.60. And then sa 2.60, mag-add ka ulit ng 0.80 kasi yun yung interval natin. So that's 0.60 plus 0.80. That's 3.4 or 3.40. So here, simulan mo naman dito ng 2.61 kasi galing ka dito ng 2.60. Okay? So there, pataas lang ng pataas hanggang ma-reach mo yung 5. So from here, meron ka ng interpretation nung scale mo, right? So you have your scale here. Since 5-point scale siya, then you have the range. Kung papasok dito yung mga weighted mean, and then yun yung interpretation. Then ito yung response, strongly agree, agree, neither agree nor disagree, disagree, strongly disagree. Then interpretation, very high kapag nasa 5. And then you have high, you have moderate, you have low, and you have very low. Okay? So ito yung mga interpretation na yon since na-compute na natin ito. Okay? For 4-point scale, meron din. Okay? So here. So yan, ito siya. 1.00 to 1.74. For 2, 1.75 to 2.49 and there. So not at all, pwedeng never true, low, somewhat not true, average or somewhat true, high or always true. Actually, ito kung ano, pwedeng walang moderate eh, parang ano siya. Kung ang scale nyo ay malipat. Strongly agree, agree, disagree, and strongly disagree, okay lang yun. Walang in center. Mas direct yung response ng respondents. Walang nasa gitna. That's totally fine. Okay din yung interpretation from there since direct to the point siya. Okay? So, here, ito, 4-point scale and we have 5-point scale. So, balikan natin yung example kanina para i-show natin kung paano yung interpretation. Okay? So, here. So, meron na tayo nito. May average na sila from the data set here. Kinompute yung average. And then, may interpretation. So, ang lumabas na average for number 1, that's 3.8667, no? So, ni-round off na niya. 3.86 naging 3.87. Ang sabi niya, ang interpretation daw ay high. Bakit kaya? Let's see. It's because yung 3.87, papasok siya dun sa range ng 3.41 to 4.20. So, ibig sabihin, high yung interpretation nun. Okay? So, pwede niyang i-interpret na from there, yung people from or yung employees from the frontline service, important sa kanila or they have high emotional, wait, ayusin natin. So, yung response ng respondents na yung mga employees na nag-work sa frontline service ng hotel industry, ang response nila ay they have high yung response nila regarding controlling their own emotions. So, marami yung nag-respond na, yes, they can control their emotions. Okay, so yun yun. Okay, so there, yun yung interpretation. 4.40, very high. Bakit very high? It's because pumasok siya dito, 4.21 to 5.0, very high. So whenever negative thoughts consume me, I always turn my mind to positive thinking. So nagsagot sila ng very high, mostly high. So they can control their thoughts, no? Kapag naging negative na, change nila into positive thinking. So from there, nakaka-generate ka na nakikita mo na kung saan papunta yung study, kung anong kahalagaan ng emotional intelligence and kung gaano kataas yung emotional intelligence ng mga employees from frontline service. Okay? So, gano'n. That's how you do it. Pwede mo siyang computing through mean and then meron kang scale to interpret. Okay? So, yan. Okay? Clear ba tayo doon? Kapag gagawa kayo ng ganito, i-arrange nyo siya by variable para mas maayos. Pwede nyo gamitin yung ganito sa pag-input ng data. And then, for your demographics also, i-present nyo din, no? Pwedeng table form if you like. Kung ilang percent, pwede mo siyang gamitin through percentage. Kung gaano kadami, or ilang percent yung male, ilang percent yung female, ilang percent yung, ano ba bang, nakagraduate ng high school, if part yun ng demographics nyo, ilang percent yung nakagraduate ng college, still working, may postgraduate education and all. Pwede nyo siyang i-interpret ng ganun. So, gamitin nyo yung percentage for that. Okay? For the demographics. Okay. May questions ba kayo regarding this? Clear naman ba? Plus ito, kung natatandaan niyo may mga ano ito, may mga formula ito na puwede niyong isang pindot lang mako-compute yan lahat. Pinag-aralan natin yan from your applied business tools, okay? Yung mga shortcut for mean, mode, standard deviation, okay? And then asan na tayo? Okay, now let's move on to testing the hypothesis. The objectives first is to describe the basic steps of testing statistical hypothesis and then to illustrate null and alternative hypothesis, types of error, and rejection region. So, sisimulan natin to, yung testing the hypothesis part. And then for the next session, ibibigyan ko pa kayo, itutuloy natin para sa more statistical tools na pwede nyong gamitin for testing the hypothesis. Okay? Simulan natin ngayon. Hypothesis is a tentative explanation, a claim, or an assertion about the people, about the objects of or or events. Okay? Ano siya? Tentative explanation. This is your claim. Yung claims ng research ninyo. Then we have statistical hypothesis is any assumption or assertion made on the distribution of population which is either true or false. Then you have your assumption sa hypothesis, right? Nag-a-assume tayo ng pwede niyang kalabasan which neither be true, totoo, or false, right? And we have hypothesis testing. This is a statistical procedure in determining which hypothesis is more acceptable as true or which hypothesis is more likely false. So, alin ba dun sa mga claims natin yung true? Alin yung hindi? Okay, so we have null and then we have alternative hypothesis. Okay? And then types of hypothesis. First ay yung null hypothesis. A null hypothesis is a hypothesis of no difference and it's denoted by HO, right? It is usually designated by a not, may not, or no term in the null hypothesis, meaning that the variables compared are the same or have no difference. Example niyan ito, HO is equals to customer satisfaction has no significance relationship with perceived service quality and hotel industry dimension. So this is an example of your null hypothesis. On the other hand, we have the alternative hypothesis. So alternative hypothesis is a hypothesis to be considered as an alternative to the null hypothesis. So that's the kabaligtaran of your null hypothesis. Usually this is denoted by HA or H1. Okay, so yan. Example naman ng alternative hypothesis, customer satisfaction has a significant relationship with perceived service quality and hotel industry dimension. So, kabaligtaran siya ng HO natin. Okay? So, we have types of decision error. Meron tayong apat na possible outcomes. Two of those outcomes lead to incorrect decision and the other two will lead to correct decision. So it can be summarized below. Ito yung four possible outcomes niya, no? So decision 1, HO is true, HO is false. So do not reject HO, correct decision. Type 2 error, also known as beta error. Reject HO, type 1 error, known as alpha error, correct decision. So to summarize that, type 1 error kapag nire-reject mo yung null hypothesis when in fact tama pala yung null hypothesis mo. So that's type 1 error, okay? Reject mo yung null hypothesis pero tama pala siya. So if you do that, so you commit to your type 1 error or yung alpha error. And then the other type of error is failure in rejecting the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis is false. So dito naman sa type 2 error or yung beta error, inaccept mo yung hypothesis, hindi mo ni-reject yung null hypothesis mo, pero false pala or yung null hypothesis mo. So that's your type 2 error or beta error. Okay? So sa pag-analyze ng hypothesis, meron tayong one-tailed and two-tailed. Okay? So simulan natin sa level of significance. So, hypothesis testing is vital. A researcher is not certain if his or her decision to accept or reject a hypothesis is 100% correct. However, the researcher is confident that a certain level that the decision is correct, say 99% of the decision he made is correct one. Hence, the confidence level is 99% or the level of significance is 1%. Meron tayong iba't ibang level of significance, 1%, 5%, 10%. Okay, so the higher the confidence level, the more certain that the decision of rejecting the null hypothesis is correct. Pag mas mataas yung confidence level, mas certain yung decision kung i-reject natin yung null hypothesis. Okay? So here, we have one-tailed and two-tailed. Unahin natin sa one-tailed. Yung one-tailed test is a test hypothesis for which the rejection region lies at only one tail of the distribution. Nasa one tail lang siya. One-tailed test is classified as left-tailed test or right-tailed test. Kung a population mean is less than the specified value of this, so then it is left-tailed test. Okay? Nakamute pala ako. Asan na ako? If the population mean is less than the specified value of the mean of the population, then it is left-tailed test. Eh kung mas mataas, um, mas mababa ang population mean sa specified value of the mean of the population, then it's the left-tailed test for which the alternative hypothesis can be expressed as this. Okay? So it is a right-tailed test if the population mean is greater than the specified value of the mean of population for which the alternative hypothesis can express as this. Okay? So ito ang example niya. Ginagamit natin to class kapag may isang sample lang, ang one-tailed test. Okay, so here. Kapag umabot dito yung value, then you can reject the HO. Pero pag nandito siya, i-accept natin yung HO or yung null hypothesis. Okay? Gano'n naman din sa left-tailed test. Baliktad sila. And then, we have two-tailed test. So, ang two-tailed test, ginagamit natin siya is when the alternative hypothesis is non-directional. So, ibig sabihin nun, kung yung direction ng effect ng hypothesis mo is unknown, gagamit tayo ng two-tailed test. Okay? Mostly, two-tailed test yung ginagamit natin. Okay? So, a two-tailed test is used when the alternative hypothesis is non-directional, which means that the values of whom measures the same kind of are not equal. So, a two-tailed test has a equal sign as a not equal sign. So, ganito yung ginagamit natin in the alternative hypothesis. So, yan siya. When the population mean is not equal to the specified value of MO, then the alternative hypothesis can be expressed as this. So, a two-tailed test, a two-tailed test, a hypothesis test for which the rejection region lies on both tails of the distribution. So, yeah. So, ito ang gagamitin natin, two-tailed test. So, here. So, here, pareho ng value ito class ha. Ang computation na to, ipapakita ko later. And then, to test this, meron tayong iba't ibang tools na ginagamit to test the hypothesis. So, sisimulan natin ngayon, and then itutuloy natin next session. So, kung sa one-tailed test, nandito lang siya, isang part lang. Dito sa two-tailed test, na nasa magkabilang pareho siya, nasa magkabilang side siya. So, these are your rejection region. Ibig sabihin, kapag lumagpas dito yung value, you have to reject the HO. Ganon din sa kabila. Pantay ng pantay yan. But if it lies in the center, we will accept your null hypothesis. Okay? So, like what I have mentioned, may mga iba't ibang tools. Pero simulan natin. Simulan natin ngayon. So, steps in testing a hypothesis. First is to formulate the null and alternative hypothesis, which is meron na tayo, right? And the number two is to identify the level of significance and the appropriate test statistics. Ang level of significance na gagamitin natin ay 5%. Okay? Remember that, 5%. So, we have z-test. Ginagamit ang z-test kapag ang population, if the population standard deviation is known or assumed, kung alam mo kung anong population standard deviation, or the sample size is larger than 30, ba? So, lahat naman kayo naka 150. So, yan, pwede nyong gamitin yung z-test if it's applicable on your study. So, ang formula ng z-test ay z is equals to the mean of sample minus the mean of population divided by the standard deviation of population ay over by the standard deviation of population divided by the square root of number of observations. Okay? Bibigyan ko kayo ng example nito next meeting para sama-sama yung examples sa hypothesis testing. Then, i-check nyo doon, tignan nyo kung ano yung pinaka-appropriate dun sa study nyo. Okay? So, next week, bibigay ko ang example nito. Gagawa ko ng tawag dito, tab, tas nandun lahat ng pwede nyong gamitin for hypothesis. Then, you study and you choose kung ano yung appropriate sa study. Okay? So, anyway, this is the z-test. Remember, ginagamit siya kapag known or assumed yung population standard deviation and kapag ang sample size ay mas malaki sa 30. So, this is your z-test. On the other hand, we have t-test. So, yung t-test, ginagamit siya if the probability distribution of the random variable is appropriate normal and kung ang sample size ay mas maliit sa 30. So, yun, gagamitin yung t-test. And then once the standard deviation is estimated from the sample. Okay, so we have here one sample t-test and then two sample t-test. And then last, ayan. Then number 3 is to determine the critical value, tabular value of the test, obtained in the value from the tables using the value of A, significant level of significance from one-tailed test and level of significance for two-tailed test. So remember kanina here, balikan natin. Sinabi natin na kapag lalagpas siya sa level of significance, ire-reject yung HO. Kapag hindi naman lumagpas, you have to accept the HO. Then dito, kapag lumagpas siya dito sa side na to, yung value, you have to reject. And then kapag nakastay siya sa critical region or sa non-rejection region, you have to accept the HO. Ito siya. So, sa critical values of Z, gagamitin nating level of significance ay 5%. So, ito siya. Two-tailed test, if you're gonna use two-tailed test, so here, 1.96, which means na kapag nag 1.97 na yan, 1.98, 2.67, we will reject the HO. Okay? Kasi nandito na siya sa rejection region. Okay? Clear ba yon? Okay, so if we're gonna use critical values na or level of significance na 5%, for two-tailed test, that's 1.96. So, dito yan, 1.96, and then here, negative 1.96. Okay? Kapag ang value, ang nakuha yung sagot from the tool na gagamitin nyo to test your hypothesis ay naging 2.67 or 1.97, basta mas malaki sa 1.96, you have to reject the HO. But if not, hindi to siya, you have to accept the HO. So, ganun siya. Yung mga iba't ibang statistical tools to test the hypothesis, itutuloy natin next session para hindi kayo ma-overwhelm. Okay? So, yan. And then for compute the z-value or t-value and then decide whether to accept or reject the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is accepted when the absolute value of the computed value of z or t is less than the absolute value or the critical value. Otherwise, reject the null hypothesis. Yun yung in-explain ko kanina. And then lastly, draw the conclusion. Then you can make your findings from that. Okay, so yes. That's our discussion for today. Anyway, ibibigay ko yung inyong mga activities. Kindly check our GCR. If may questions, if may consultations, or if may questions kayo, may hindi naintindihan, may clarification, you can message me sa aking messenger or pwede rin sa GC natin. Okay? So, thank you for listening and I hope you have a great day today. Bye, everyone.